Okay, it is 8:30 p.m. and it is Thursday, November 8th, 2018. Welcome to J150 Introduction to Criminal Law. My name is Richard Wright, Professor Richard Wright, Dr. Richard Wright. Whatever you want to call me, you can call me Richard if you like. And I will be with you for the next 6 weeks, 5.5 weeks to be exact, of providing you with information and details to help you in understanding about criminal law. Now, you will not learn criminal law in detail. You'll learn, we're just going to scratch the surface in this course because, trust me, I know I was a criminal lawyer for many years. I started working with lawyers in '69 at a big law firm, which you'll hear me talk about later. But I really started practicing criminal law in 1978 as a lawyer, all the way through to 2000 full time, and then I started winding down. But I did a lot of cases, and I worked in various areas and fields, which you'll hear me talk about at the end of this. So today I just want to get you started. You will notice that today we are meeting on Thursday. We will normally be meeting Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. and you'll see the schedule here as we go forth. So I'm going to get into the information. I'm pretty much tonight going to cover the details about what your expectations are for the next 6 weeks, 5.5 weeks for this course. And as you can see in the instructor information box, I provide you my phone number. That is actually my cell phone. That is this phone right here. And you can call me any hour of the day. You can call me, text me, or you can email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day, and you figure that one out. And then you also should be aware that in this course, APA, which all of us talk about, and critical thinking are very important in the grading of all assignments. We encourage you to run your papers through Grammarly so that you can have some idea about where you are in terms of percentage of information from sources that you discovered from your research. And you want to make sure that you are involving in each of your written assignments some details, some information concerning things that you learned or discovered from your research, but you want to apply them to the facts or the issues of a written assignment, and you want to provide analysis of that. And that's how you pretty much, short term go to critical thinking, but there's more details, and I'll tell you where you can find that. These are some requirements that you should pay close attention in bold print. You have to conduct research for all written assignments. It's one of the requirements for information literacy, research, so that you will be able to do that. That's what we want you to have a skill. No one wants you to just copy and paste materials, and we don't want you just to take stuff from the textbook. Because remember how the textbook came about. The authors had to sit down and do research, gathering materials from all over to come up with that source, and then they put their positions and things in there. So you'll lose 2 points if you do that. All written assignments should be an APA. Citations in the body and references in the end. I'm going to say this up front. Students mess up a lot of times in this course and lose 5 points all the time by putting citations or references, or put it this way, most of the time it's just references. But citations should be in the body of the paper. The purpose for citations, so you understand, is citations provide support to the statements that you include in your paper. It gives the reader the idea of where you got the information that you're elaborating on. so that you're giving credit to the source that you did. Now, if you have references in your paper and you have citations that you didn't, if you have references and you didn't provide them as citations, there's an issue with that I have, because that means then that the sources of the information listed on your reference page is in your paper, but you didn't give credit for it. So you need to give credit for that as well. So if you have 3 references, you should have at least 1 citation, at least 1, a minimum, for each of those references, probably more. But the bottom line is that you need to use all your references as citations, okay? Then you also need to make sure you have a cover sheet for all written assignments, every one of them. And then these are some helpful resources that we provide for you, and you'll see in the module more about the librarian learning to help you, the writing guide. Then there's tutoring assistance. Now, tutoring assistance is not something that you get just because of the fact that you're having troubles. Tutoring can also benefit you if you find yourself in a situation where you need to come in and enhance your work so you can perform better. But tutoring, and then we provide tutors to help you, and they're available to help you. And student tutors in Tutor Match are colleagues who have done the assignments and some of the work you're doing, and they're not going to give you their work, but they're going to help you and give you ideas about what is expected. So that's the key. All right. Then there are some supporting resources that I put in here, articles that help you go beyond the textbook as required, some analytical tips for criminal justice students, the importance of information literacy, which goes back to the reason why you need to do research for all your written assignments, references, citations in the body, and references at the end. And then you don't have to worry about the annotated bibliography. Now, if you have a question or concern about critical thinking, you can copy and you can paste. This, and then you will find yourself in a situation where you will be able to find more information about critical thinking as one of the transferable skills. And we'll be talking about that when we start talking about that in a minute, transferable skills. Each assignment has a rubric, and you'll see the rubrics. And then the discussion posts have a general rubric, okay? Now, okay. All right, so now you'll see in this session down here, live lecture session information. It's also going to be included in the announcement, but it tells you that today we're going to be here from 8:30 to 10. Now, most weeks it will be 8:30 to 9:30. It will not go beyond 9:30. But today, because I want to, at the end, share something with you to help you understand that I understand challenges like you will not believe, but you will see. If you've been in my class before, you've heard this, but I'm going to give it anyway. Then, starting next week, we'll be on Tuesdays. Starting the 13th, which is Tuesday, 8:30 to 9:30. You have to attend the lecture or listen to the archive. There'll be a keyword given. It could be in the middle, could be in the end, and I've probably talked about it before the whole thing is in, but you won't notice the keyword. My idea is I want to make sure that you listen to the whole recording. and make sure that you didn't just fly through it, look for the key word. It's not going to be easy to do that. And I keep record. When I see a person doesn't, you'll get a 0, and you'll lose points, and you'll see where that is. Then I will record the lectures, and then they will be located under there. Like today's lecture will be converted. I convert my videos, my lectures to YouTube so that you can access them, because there are oftentimes problems that they have with WebEx, and they're doing some things and it creates a problem. I already just saw an email saying that there's going to be a problem coming up next week with accessing the videos. But it won't affect you guys, because I will have recorded the video and then converted it to YouTube, so you'll be able to still use it. So now let's look at some of the things. Hopefully you've looked at the things that were sent to you earlier, the welcoming email. And so here's things that will help you dealing with APA, so that you can make sure you do that. The writing process. And then we have, before we get to week 1 announcement, we get to the welcome announcement. This is an announcement that I sent out to everybody, and it tells you, first paragraph, a little bit about me, but it admonishes you. All the bold print things, take these seriously and make sure that you abide by them. Announcements, where your course information, updates, and things like that you will see. Usually there'll be at least one, sometimes more than one. Post in the student lounge, which some of you have. You saw my information in the student lounge if you took time to look at that. And the purpose for the student lounge is to help you to connect with your students and myself, your colleagues. Excuse me. And then I sent you a welcome message email. And in the welcome message email, I gave you a little bit about me again, and then the information about this session that we're in right now. During the syllabus, we're going to go over the syllabus, especially dealing with the academic integrity policy, which is important for you to abide by when you are completing assignments, taking tests, and things of that nature. Then we're going to talk about not the attendance policy, but we're going to talk about the late assignment submission policy as well, and when we get there. The calendar, very important. You can click on the calendar. At the top, there's a section up at the top that tells you, here we go, calendar and resources. So you can click on that. That's one place that you can do it. You can do it there. And then there's general course questions. This is when you have a question that anyone can answer, including me, but it's not your personal stuff. And you can find that under the discussion section. So if you go to discussions, and then you come down, there's student lounge. I was talking about that a few minutes ago. Then there's course questions. So any question here that the entire class can benefit from. Now, not personal of nature, then you send that to me directly through my email. Okay? So let's go back to the course home page. Okay, so then, moving right down, resources tab, which is at the top. I showed you that. You can find information about Grammarly. You should know about Grammarly. Grammarly is very important. It's where you run your papers through to check for the grammar, spelling, but most importantly, there's a checkbox for critical thinking, or rather plagiarism. You want to check that plagiarism box. When you check that plagiarism box, it gives you the ability to be able to see how you're doing with your critical thinking. If your percentage is high, you need to not decrease the information, what you need to possibly write more information concerning the critical thinking, analytical. That's what we're looking for, analyzing the materials. Again, if you looked at this critical thinking video, it will explain in detail. Then your report tab, that tells you where you can find your grade book. Notice that in the grade book, there will be rubrics, and you will notice it tells you what section, then it tells you some comment under that. So you'll see what you did right or what you did wrong. You'll generally see as an opening, I appreciate the time and effort you put into completing this assignment. I see that, I put that in all the time because I really do. I appreciate you completing the assignment, but then I will go on and tell you what you did good, and I'll tell you if you did something bad, and what you need to do to correct it. So those are the kind of things. And then if you ever have any questions about any of my comments, reach out to me. I already told you how you could reach out to me at the top of this session. And it's right up under my name over here. Here it is, in instructor information, okay? And then, you know, for assistance, guides, we have the link for that as well, all right, to help you. And then this, again, reminds you of our schedule for live lectures. And so that's it. Now, if you have a technical problem, I encourage students right away to contact PSC, or Personal Support Center. They're 24/7, and then here's the phone number. And the phone number is at the bottom of every page that you run across. There it is right here. And you can call them, and then they will be able to help you with issues. All right. So now let's get into our week 1 announcement. And every week you'll see one that says week 1, then you'll see a week 2. When week 2 comes, says chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook. Now, I also sent you copies of PowerPoints. And the PowerPoints are for your benefit. I don't use them during the lecture, but they're to help you to see a brief synopsis of what the chapters are all about, and also to help you prepare for exams, because you'll have some opportunities to practice for exams that are coming up as well. You'll see as you go through the calendar and look at that, or the modules themselves. So chapter 1 and 2, then types of law, what is crime? We're not going to break these down today because we got so much material to cover, but each week I will discuss some parts of these. Probable cause, key terms, but I'll show you how to use these things today, and that will help you. And then there's the practice quiz. Now, this practice quiz is always important because it helps you to prepare for the quiz that you have. You don't have a quiz every week. You'll see as we go over that in a little bit. So then your written assignment for this week in discussion is police dogs and warrantless searches. And your initial post is due this Saturday, and reply posts are due this Saturday. Now, that's only for this first week. Next week, you will see your initial post will be due on Tuesday night, which is the same night that we have the lecture. And then your reply post will be due on that Saturday. I do encourage you to reply to more than one post. You won't get any additional points, and you don't have to have citations and references in discussion posts, but they're good because it demonstrates to me that you are looking up material. And I see people a lot of times use the textbook, but try to find other resources other than the textbook if you're going to use for your discussion posts. Okay? You don't lose points, but it's a good habit. Finally, there's a written assignment, Elements of Criminal Law. Every Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you're on, actually, if you do the 11:59 p.m. and you're on Eastern Time, then that means you're going to get it in early. if you're on Rocky Mountain or West, which I think a few of you might be in Kansas, if you're down in that area there, then it's got to be 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, okay? So you got to make sure you keep that in mind about the timeliness of your assignments. And then it talks about the first lecture, which is taking place now. And then this is my little statement that you'll see in every weekly announcement, not always in the special announcement, but in the weekly announcement. Let's start strong and finish strong. And you'll learn about my motto, adversity is the springboard to success. You're going to learn about that tonight and why I say that and what it means to me and how I expect you to learn from it and be able to help you to be successful. My goal is student success. Okay, so let's take a look at the calendar for now. This is another way that I can get the calendar. You can go to the top and get your calendar. And there it is. It tells you your reading assignment. And if you clicked on it, it opens it up and it breaks it down to more details about what I've already said. Then your live lecture, which tells you in case you can't find the link where the lecture is, even though it's already in the course homepage as well. Then your initial post on the topic and reply post due the 10th. Then your written assignment, which I'm going to elaborate on more in just a few minutes. But see the rubric and module. That's going to be the thing that you're always going to pay attention to. Okay, and then next week you start Monday, and then you'll see the lectures every Tuesday after that for the rest of the quarter. Okay, quarter ends December 14th. Goes very fast, so you want to try to stay on top of your assignments. All righty. Any questions so far? If so, type in the chat box and I will see them. In the meantime, I'm going to keep on going. And if you do type it in, and I'll pause to answer your question to deal with it. This is the syllabus, and it tells you, the name of the course. It tells you my name, my phone number, email address. And again, it tells you the same thing that I had on the course homepage. It says a reminder about the requirements for completing assignments. Very important. That's why it's in all caps. Then it tells you things like the text. Okay. Coming down here. This course consists of readings and the course schedule. You have that with your announcements and also your course calendar. Discussion posts. Your comments must be clear, concise, and complete. You're also required to respond to your classmates' responses. You can respond to more than one, but make sure that you at least complete the minimum requirement. And respect and professionalism are very important in dealing with each other's responses and posts. I might tell you I don't agree with something that you said. That's not shooting you down. I'll explain to you why, because you may have not looked at it right. And I will give you my professional experience on it. Written assignments, and so it tells you what you'll have to do regarding that. And so you're going to take various roles as if you were a law enforcement officer or other individuals as well. The quizzes, there's 2 graded quizzes. It's kind of like midterm and final. The first quiz deals with the first 3 modules, so it'll be in week 3. The second quiz is in week 6. Now, you have practice quizzes along the way. So these are basically like your final exams. Okay? Now, Notice this. You have 90 points for discussions. Okay? 90 points. And if you take that and you divide that by the number of weeks, you'll be able to see how many points you get for a perfect number. 18% of your grade is discussions. Look at 200 points or 40% of your grade to relate to your written assignments, which is very important, and your rubric and the module are very critical in that. Your quizzes, I told you there are 2, and you get 180 points or 36%. So 76% of your points come from the written assignment and the quiz. These are easy. You get 30 points, 5 points each time you give me the key word for your live lecture. Now, don't just come to the lecture just to get the key word, because in the lecture you will learn things that will help you to obtain a good grade, and that's the thing that you want to do, I'm sure. So now we're talking about grades. My goal is to be in this portion all the way down to here. Now I'm going to say this right now, and I say it every quarter. Do not call me, text me, email me, ask me, what does it take to get a C in my class? I'm not going to answer you. I refuse to answer it. My reason being is because of the fact that my goal is to produce A and B students. My primary goal is A, and then my secondary goal is B students. Those are the students who are going to develop the habits that are going to be able to help you to succeed in your chosen field. And so I'm living proof of that because I did that. And so are other professors that you have. We studied hard to stay at the top. The more you learn, the more you earn, and that's actually true. And those who are when we got ready to interview for jobs, they did look at GPA, but guess what? Our knowledge was based upon how we performed during interviews, our resumes, and then our grades and things like that. But the point of the matter is grades are important as a measurement of how well you are doing with the material. It's not an exact science, but it's the best thing that we use. So my goal is to do this. And what we do is we award people who are in that A-B with Dean's List and Honor Roll. One of my favorite activities is the academic awards ceremony, where I like to see students succeed. The second is graduation. That's the ultimate, when you walk across the stage. And when you walk across the stage and you have that gold cord, that gold cord means that you were constantly in the A-B area, and that's where you want to stay. Think about it. You're spending really good money, okay? You want to maximize your profits. The way you maximize your profits is the more you put in, the more you get out. The more you study, the more you plan successful, you become more successful. And I'm going to help you to do that in this class. So now, this is participation for me, which you'll already see taking place. So now let's take a few minutes and talk about transferable skills. Now, we at this college have identified a number of skills that employers have told us that they are looking for potential employees or potential hires. And so these are skills that will be utilized by you in the courses that you take at this school. And you will find that they are identified in each of your assignments. And so these are the things that we want you to be proficient in. One of the first is communication. Employers say all the time, and you'll hear People have to be able to communicate well, written and orally. So that's why we look at your grammar and grammarly. That's why we look at your plagiarism levels. That's why we look at your critical thinking issue, which is the second um, of the transferable skills. A critical thinker is someone who can be creative, someone who can uh, analyze and break down the issues of situations and circumstances that they encounter. I am a natural critical thinker because I went to law school. Learning under what we call the Socratic method turned me into a natural critical thinker. And so I do that in all things because of that. And that eventually is the way that you will find yourself operating, which is a good thing. But employers are looking for people. There are things that people come up with that others don't. But it's because they apply their own individual critical thinking that's different from the critical thinking of another person to be able to cause change or to come up with better ideas than the ideas that exist and to make changes and things like that. So critical thinking is something that is essential. And again, there is a video that helps you with that. In fact, there's a course that you take here at the school that helps you to understand critical thinking. We are not about having you, students ask me, how come I need to go to other sources if I have the textbook already? Because we're going to deal with one of the transferable skills, information literacy, at the end. We want you to be able to find information. You're going to have to do things called research. Almost every profession today requires research because things are ever changing. And research is as simple sometimes as going to Google, or is as simple as going to a source in the Library and Learning Center. But the resources that you come up with dealing with information literacy must be credible resources so that you'll learn resources to stay away from, such as Wikipedia. It's a no-no. It's a no-no, and you'll see it in the rubrics when we grade. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead of myself. But digital fluency is another. Digital fluency means that all resources are now digital. We are in a digital society. Everybody has one of these. Everybody has one of these. And I look at constantly, I look at from where I came from, that we didn't have any of that. But I had to adapt to the world today. When I came to Rasmussen College, I taught residentially. But I still had to learn how to use the computer. I had to learn how to use learning modules. I had to learn how to use various systems. Like here now we have Angel. We had Angel, I should say, and now we use Blackboard. And and some teach Engage, but we use Blackboard primarily. So anyway, the point of the matter is that these are computer systems, but guess what? Your books, I used to have these physical books, but now I can still have them, but the digital fluency is much easier. Imagine this right here that I have in my hand, and this is my, again, my cell phone. And I can go to, on my phone here, I have an app on here, and it is called Bookshelf. And on Bookshelf, when I open it up, it tells me my books. You can't really see it that well, but the textbook for this course, I have it right here. I can open it up, and I can see my textbook. My textbook is right on here. I can read it on here. That's the digital aspects. I can bookmark it. I can do all kinds of things with it. If I had to carry physically around all those books in there, it's much harder. I've had to do that, but it's digital now. So we want you to be able to be fluent in that. Diversity. You're going to work with people from all backgrounds. You're going to encounter people from all backgrounds, ethnic groups, religious beliefs, cultures, and people are not going to always perceive things the way you do. People are to the right, to the left, moderate, conservative, liberals, radicals, as some people say. Some people are Democrats, some are Republicans, some are a mixture, some are independent. But the point of the matter is everybody's position needs to be respected, even if you don't agree with them. So diversity is something that we at this school encourage you to develop. In fact, we have a diversity and inclusion committee, which I've worked on, which I've participated in panel discussions, because I have colleagues from all over the world that I work with. I have people from different states. I have people who are very diverse when it comes to, and I'm laughing because of what I'm getting ready to say, in their sports teams. I'm here in Illinois. I teach many of you who are probably Packer fans, Viking fans, Buccaneer fans, Cowboys. Anyway, you get my point. And so, you know, we can agree to disagree. But anyway, the point of the matter is that we still operate and respect each other's positions. Teamwork. You work on teams with individuals. Everybody, there's an old song that I remember when I was a kid, and I remember in 8th grade, the title of the song was "No Man is an Island." And what that was saying in the lyrics, and I forget all the lyrics, but the lyrics basically were teaching us as kids that we don't stand alone. We work with teams. Using the term, there is no lone ranger, especially in law enforcement. You're going to work with people who are from various specialties, and you're going to have to respect what they do and learn from them. Or, as we say, your case starts out as a puzzle, but there are pieces. And so forensics can offer one piece. You know, the detectives can offer another piece. You know, and so we go on and on and on. So everybody has a role to play in the full thing. And so you learn that, because you're going to do that professionally. So you learn that in school. How do you do that in this class? Well, you learn it pretty much by your discussion forums, how you respond to each other. You must respond to at least one, but we encourage you to respond to more than one. The point of the matter is that sometimes you'll congratulate the person, hey, that's a good post, and then you'll elaborate and explain why. Those kinds of things. Ethics. Ethics are so important. Doing the right thing. We talk about the academic integrity policy, which I don't go into, but it's here on the syllabus, and you want to make sure that you're operating in an ethical fashion. I've taught ethics at the college, in ethics in criminal justice. I taught ethics in medicine, medical law and ethics, and I taught business ethics. The point of the matter is ethics is so critical in being able to do the right thing. And then professional responsibility. If you have a department you work for, if you are a member of an organization, as lawyers, we had a license, we had a requirement that we had to satisfy the requirements of that. And if we fell below that, you were disciplined. And the same thing happens in employment and working in the field. You want to make sure that you operate responsibly as whatever you decide you're going to become in criminal justice. And then finally, information literacy. As I was talking about earlier, being able to find credible resources and information to justify or support the positions that you take in terms of completing your assignments. You'll have assignments given to you by your employers, and you'll have to do reports or make a presentation. So you're going to have to be able to find information and details to support your positions. And then you'll add your spin to it. So those are the transferable skills that in every class that you take here, that you'll have a chance to exercise. Now I want to talk about the late assignment policy. Now, you can read it, and it says off the bat that you have up until 7 days to submit an assignment. However, it also tells you that each day 10% is assessed to 24 hours late, an additional 10 for each day. So here's the point. Now, we're not talking about discussion posts right now. And so here's my point in written assignments. If you have your assignments due and you know what the general due date is, if not, I just said it earlier, but I'll say it again. It's Sunday, midnight, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Let's say you submit your assignment and it's very good. You've satisfied all the criteria, and your assignment is submitted on Monday. The highest you can get then is a 90. Even though you have 100 paper, then if you submit it Tuesday, same thing. Now you lost another 10. So now you're down to 80. Wednesday, 70. By the time you get to Thursday, you're at 60. You're at 60. Look at that. Look at what 60 is. 60 is D. Okay? And then if you get to the next day, 50, well then you're at F. So here's the point. While it says 7, in reality it's not 7. It's less than that. Now, I will say this about that. There's a line, and we're going to go back to discussion posts in a minute. Instructors may waive the late penalty or a time frame in the case of extenuating circumstances. Your dean doesn't decide what it is. They're going to say, reach out to your faculty member, reach out to your professor, reach out to your instructor, because we have that ability. And those of you who have been students with me in the past know that I am one professor who believes in helping my students. But extenuating circumstances are determined by me. Now, what is not an example of extenuating circumstances? I had to work overtime. I say that's not extenuating circumstance. I was tired, and so I couldn't get the assignment in. That's not an extenuating circumstance. Or I didn't know, is not an extenuating circumstance. My child was sick and I had to attend to my child. Now we're getting to extenuating circumstances. I was sick. Now we're getting to extenuating circumstances. You had to attend a funeral or something like that. I'm not giving you things to use, but I'm saying this to you. I'm giving you ideas of what they are. But here's the point. You should be able to sit back and think, what is extenuating circumstances? We have extenuating circumstances that, like, for example, you had a storm in the area, tornadoes. We have students who have been subjected to the hurricanes down in Florida and on the East Coast, and down in Texas and places like that. They've had some extenuating circumstances based on Irma and Michael and some of these other circumstances that have come about because of storms. So there are all kinds of things. There's things that happen. But here's the deal. I need to know. And I need to know as soon as possible. So now, if you had the extenuating circumstance, would you email me? Or would you call me or text me? I would say, if it was me, putting myself in the position, my thing is I would pick up the phone because my professor gives me that ability. Because every professor doesn't do that, by the way. I'm talking about myself. You can call me, text me, email me any hour of the day. Maybe you want to email me and then call. If you text me and I see it, a lot of times, those of you who have been students of mine in the past, I will call you. Now, I've had times when I call you and you're at work and you answer the phone and say, I can't talk, I'm at work. I said, well, then you should just text me back, just saying, I'll call you afterwards. And those kinds of things. But my point being is that if you reach out to me and I'm actually there and getting it, I will stop. I'm out sometime with my family having dinner, and I'll see a situation and I will address it right then and there. My wife understands my commitment to my students. I pastor a church on Sundays. People can call me while I'm in the pulpit or at church, but I won't answer them. But after church, I will answer. Before church, I will answer. The point of the matter is that if it's something important, I would be calling, texting, or emailing. And please, when you text me, make sure you put your name, make sure you put the course that you're in as well. Because I have over 100 students, and I might not know who it is. That I won't recognize the phone number and that kind of thing. So anyway, the point of the matter is I operate very liberally when it comes to extenuating circumstances. Please don't send me copies of your obituaries, letter from your doctors, from your IT people, you know, about your computer and all of that stuff. Don't do that. Don't do that to me. You don't have to. Just tell me. If you say I contacted PSC, then I might come back and say, okay, give me the case number. And you'll have a case number. And I can call them to verify that issue as well. Sometimes they'll CC me on it. The point of the matter is that I don't want to be, I'm not investigating your statements. I'm taking you because I believe that you're ethically sound. I believe that you're truthful. And I think that's the way you are, because here's what I'd say. If you're an unethical student, you're going to be an unethical professional, and there's going to be problems further down the road for you. It will catch up with you. So now that's my late submission issue. Now, do not wait 4 weeks, 3 weeks, and try to contact me to catch up. It ain't going to happen. After the 3rd week of class, head into the 4th week, don't ask me about doing weeks 1, 2, and 3. Don't ask me about that, because I'm going to say no, because that's the midterm. The point of the matter is you're going to have to learn to try to manage your time and deal with situations. Believe me, I have had students who had some real serious extenuating circumstances, like sudden deaths right in the middle of the quarter, serious issues, computer crashes, all kinds of things like that. I understand those things. Trust me. I had a student who revealed that they lost where they were living. They lost their job, and so they were living in their car and that stuff. Well, okay, they let me know that. So I worked with that student, and that student did well. But the point of the matter is that, and then I will tell you, if you get to a certain point, I says, talk to your advisor about what you should do. Sometimes there's a possibility if you get a medical leave. Sometimes there's a possibility that you can apply for an incomplete, or rather you can drop the course and then not be penalized. Anyway, there are all kinds of issues that I don't make those calls, but I will tell you to do it. So that's the way that works. So now let's talk about discussion posts. Discussion posts are generally due, as I said, initial post Tuesday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, reply post 11 p.m. Central Standard Time on Sundays. Now, your initial post will be, you'll lose a point for each day that it's late. Now, the discussion forum ends 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time Saturday night, technically, okay? But here's what I do with my students. If you have posted an initial post within the time period, that is from Tuesday to Saturday, you will lose points, then you will have points deducted. If you submit a reply post that Sunday, you will get points for that, but I'll deduct 1 point. That's my contribution to help my students. I don't even know anybody else that does that, but I do it. And I explained it to my dean, and I explained why I did it. However, if you submit your initial post and reply post on Sunday, all bets are off. It could be the best post, very well written. You can write it, you can research it, you can do everything. But it's after the forum has done. I will say it's very good, excellent, but you will get no points because the forum ends. It says that. If you look at this, it says online discussions conclude at the end of the current module. Discussion posts made after the due date for discussion posts in the current week will not be accepted. That's a school rule, okay? And I'm not going to break it, all right? So but you say, well, wait a minute, but you let me do the reply post on Sunday. The theory that I have, and I explained to my bosses, is this, is that you did participate, but now you're replying. Even though the response was after the form ended, you did participate by submitting your initial post within the time when the form was still going on. And they say, okay, I can see that. Okay, that goes within your discretion. And that's what I do, okay? But I've had students try to submit the most eloquent posts on Sunday after they didn't do the initial post, Tuesday through Saturday, and I can look at them and say, these are great. I've even had where I've graded the module for discussions and given a 0 because the person didn't submit one, and then they submit them after that. And then I go back and I look at them, and I said, these are nice still, but you still get a 0. And that's how that works, okay? So that should be pretty clear. The incomplete policy, you take a look at that yourself. The academic integrity policy, take a look at this yourself and understand that all of your work that's done in this school has to be done with this in mind. In other words, when you take your quizzes and your tests, you shouldn't have sticky notes and pen, paper and all that around you. Because I'm going to tell you something. You will mess up because you won't do well. You're supposed to be able to take that the same way as if you were in a room and it's a monitor there. If it's someone there, proctoring, we believe that you're going to follow the academic integrity policy and that you are not going to cheat in examples. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to find yourself operating that way. Then you also don't want to use like papers that somebody else wrote as your assignments. Oh, that will get you kicked out of the school. But here's our deal, and I said it already, that if you are an unethical student, you will eventually find yourself in a dilemma as an individual. Okay, now, it's about 9:24. We got about 35 more minutes to go. This is how typically things are going to work. You have your assignments again. And then I already talked about discussion posts. Now, here is how your written assignments. And it tells you there are 3 scenarios. Now, you do not pick one, you do not pick 2, you pick all 3. And then it tells you in bold print, a minimum of 3 pages, not counting the reference page. And then you're going to deal with these questions. Then it tells you where you can find resources. And this is the one I showed you earlier, but it helps you with, let me show you this so you'll see it. For weekly written assignment, look what it does. Now, I'm going to go back to the rubric in a minute, but I want to show you something. You click on that. See what it says? It says discussion post. Okay, but let me show you something. Weekly assignment. And you go down, and it tells you and explains to you how you operate with your weekly assignments. Okay? And it tells you how to make sure that you've covered everything. It talks about Grammarly. Remember, I talked about that earlier. Grammarly. How you log in and you can set up your free Grammarly account. You have a free Grammarly account from our school, but you want to make sure you use that because it'll give you the free ability to check for plagiarism. And it tells you that we use this. And then it tells you here how to create your Grammarly account. You click here. And then it explains everything there. So you're going to make sure you do that. Okay? And so this is particular to this course. It's set up by course. Again, it helps you. APA, everything, online library, test-taking tips, study strategies, resources, finding statutes and cases. Everything is right here. So you have it at your fingertips to be able to help you, all right? So now, let's go back to this. So you click on this, and it opens up, and it tells you the due date for this assignment. As soon as it opens up, here we go. Your due date tells you your possible rubric points. Now, here's what the rubric looks like. This is what you'll see in your grade book, too. You'll get 10 points if you follow this. Okay? You'll get 10 points if you follow this one and do this right. And then 10 points. All right, let's see. It's not going down. There we go. 10 points for that. So you got 30 points. And then your organization paragraph meets the 3-page minimum requirement as well. All right? And then the bottom part is your APA citations. And that adds up all of your points. So that tells you that's how each of your assignments will operate. Okay? You have any questions? If so, type in the chat box. Do you have any? You have any? So if you don't have any, I don't hear you saying anything. So I'm presuming that you don't have any. All right, let me check something here. So you find yourself in a situation there where you have done all those requirements, and that's how you get all those points. Okay, so we go back, and then there are your assignments, and then you have your live lecture classroom, and you see if you click on that, it tells you also in the calendar when the due date is, but it tells you too it's due by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, so you can get all your points there as well. All right. So now let's go into what the weekly module is. Okay, so I can show you, this is where we will spend most of our time when when I am doing your lectures. Okay, we looked at the assignment, so let's look at the lesson content. In the lesson content, the first part, it tells you what the objectives are for that particular module. Define crime, how crime is classified, what probable cause it is, and applying the Fourth Amendment to a crime. You're going to find this, and I'll tell you this up front, that in criminal law, the amendments that you're going to spend most of the time with, the First Amendment that you're going to spend most of your time with is the Fourth Amendment, dealing with search and seizure. The second one is the Fifth Amendment, and that deals with self-incrimination. That's when we get into Miranda and things of that nature. And then the Sixth Amendment, right to counsel. Those are the three main ones, but the most of your time, the Fourth Amendment, dealing with probable cause, dealing with the issues that police, law enforcement must learn to follow, and that the constitutional rights of individuals that are protected. So anyway, we're going to talk about that, not in detail today because of where we are here, but each week we explain what laws are all about in this week, and I would just summarize and talk about this section. And then I talk about types of criminal laws and then next. But you can look at this yourself this week. Difference between civil law and criminal law. Be aware that in criminal law, individuals must be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil law, it's preponderance of the evidence. In criminal law, it's the people of the state or the jurisdiction against that individual. In civil law, it's the two parties that are involved. It doesn't necessarily have to be a government entity. Then the Constitution is what undergirds all of it. All the law must be consistent with the Constitution, the United States Constitution. And then cases up under the statutes that each jurisdiction have are what we call case law. And case law operates on the basis of a procedure called stare decisis, S-T-A-R-E, and then the second word, decisis, D-E-C-I-S. You should run across that in your research, because that's how, what we do is we take cases that have already been decided to determine how we're going to support our arguments, and or we can present novel arguments or presentations as to why that should change, thus applying critical thinking. And that's how law changes. But case law, I'm just giving you a thumbnail. Administrative law has to do pretty much with government, businesses, but not necessarily criminals. And most of these result in fines. The other can result in incarceration. And so that's it. So that's kind of like what the laws are and what they operate. And that's just a brief version of it. A crime. Crime is based upon various classifications. Your primary two breakdowns are felonies and misdemeanors. Now, the way you know the difference is a misdemeanor is not as serious, and the individual could be punished by a fine and less than a year in jail. And so they're not as serious, and they give some examples here. Felonies, more than 1 year in prison. Notice that what happens with misdemeanors, you go to jail. With felonies, you go to prison, and they're more serious. And then they list them over here. Just some. And then there's a thing called an infraction, which is kind of like in the middle, non-criminal violations like traffic offenses and things of that nature. But these are the main two. So if ever the question is asked about an offense, if, first of all, number one, you can think, is a battery considered a misdemeanor or a felony? Probably 99.99999% battery is going to be a misdemeanor. But if you use a weapon or something, then it becomes what we call ag battery or aggravated battery. Then it elevates itself and goes to the felony status. So, well, there's really no such thing as petty misdemeanors. Some jurisdictions might call it that, but most of the time, petty misdemeanors are what some classification is infractions. So the general breakdown is felony or misdemeanor. That's what you need to know. That's what you need to always remember, that criminal law and crime is broken down into felonies and misdemeanors. Okay? Some jurisdictions use different terms, but the standard is that. Now, jails versus prison, I already kind of talked about that, but I'll tell you this, is that jail is a temporary place, short term. And it also is a place, like I said, you saw if you did a misdemeanor. Prison is when you go for a year or more, and usually the state and the federal government. Jails are usually run by the county government or either the local government. That's pretty much the way it operates. So jails versus prisons. So look at it like this. Jails are short-term, prisons are long-term. That's the general thing that you just need to be aware of. Probable cause, again, it's a level of proof that must be met to make an arrest. And I'm not going to go over the details of all of this today. If I was going to do a lecture on it, I would, but I'm not. Now, what I do recommend is that you download the Fourth Amendment and then save that, because you're going to be using it quite a bit in this course. Then there are some exceptions to obtaining a warrant, such as plain view. And it kind of means basically what it says. It means the officer can just see it, okay? Let's say if you're outside and someone's got their window open or shades up, and the officer's walking by, and they see what appears to be marijuana or drugs. Is that considered as plain view? Would you think so? Yep. Look at what it says in the example. If a police officer approaches the front door of residence by the sidewalk that all visitors use, and while looking through the front door window sees methamphetamine, this is a plain view observation and would permit without a warrant to seize the evidence. So, other human senses such as smell can be applied to the plain view exception as well. If an officer at the front door investigating a noise complaint and they smell the odor of marijuana, because they know it, their plain smell could also be used to support probable cause. Now, the issue of whether or not a police dog or something like that, I'm not even going to comment about it. I already did in your discussion post. And you will find that there's some things that'll surprise you with that. So I'm not gonna comment about that. But it'll surprise you. It will surprise you. I know what many people think, but if you even look at my responses I posted in the discussion post so far, you'll see. Consent is where a person voluntarily allows a search. They don't have to have. Automobile exception, I'm not going to get into that either. And then search incident to a lawful arrest. And these are just some of the cases or statutes that are involved. So you can take a look at this. I think that, to be honest with you, if you read the material, if you looked at the PowerPoints, then you'll have that, and you'll be in good shape for it. Now, key terms. This is something to help you to get ready for your final exam. Remember what I told you. You have a midterm that's going to be week 3. Then you have a final exam week 6. And the neat part about it is your midterm consists of weeks 1, 2, and 3, and your final consists of 4, 5, and 6. So what you learned in 4, 5, and 6, you don't have to go back and restudy that for the final exam, okay? But these key terms, and here's how you use them. These are games in the activity, and this is what you do. Now, the best one to use is flashcards. You click on flashcards, and then you might see this. Then go ahead and do that, and then let it'll open up. There we go. So now, what it does is this. It presents a question. The legal components within a statute that must be present or met in order to establish violation of a criminal law. So the answer to that question is right here. There it is. The elements of the offense. Now, then you go to the next question. The act of the police taking a person into custody and no longer free to leave. We call that arrest. By the way, you're going to learn as we talk about this throughout the course that arrest does not mean that I have to tell you you're under arrest. If you are not free to leave, you are under arrest. If you are under arrest and you're going to question somebody, you must give them what? You probably already know this. What do you have to tell them? What do you have to give them? What do we call it? What rights? Okay. Well, that's kind of the way it's spelled, but yes, Miranda rights. That's right. Okay. Not just rights. Okay. And then the next one. The amendment that prohibits unreasonable search and seizure and establishes probable cause is what? What amendment? I told you. Yeah, there we go. There we go. And that's the one that you're going to use primarily. So anyway, that's it. I'm not going to go into more of these. But these are things that you need to take the time to do, and they will help you, okay? So now we go back to the lesson content, and I want to go back to and show you some other things that can help you. These are things that we put together to help you. Practice elements of an offense. Same kind of thing. You click on this. Okay, so then you hit the start activity. Now let me show you something. Click the element below that is not an element of armed robbery. Click the element that is not an element of armed robbery. Which one is not? Is with force and taking property? Is it necessary to enter a dwelling? Here we go. It's going to be right. Correct. Armed robbery is the intentional taking of property of another with force or intent. Armed robbery doesn't involve entering the dwelling of another. So you see how that works? So you identify the elements of simple battery by selecting the correct answer from each element. So element 1, simple battery. Is it accidentally or intentionally? Intentionally. Element 2, threatens bodily harm or causes bodily harm. Yep. Threaten. If you threaten bodily harm, what do you call that? Assault. No, it's assault. Assault. To property or to another? That's right. You can't commit battery on somebody's property. I mean, by hitting the property, have to hit a person. And then the fourth element is with their consent or without their consent. It's very easy. There you go. So those are, and then you submit it, and bam, you got them all right. So you see how that works? That's another tool that you can use. Okay, I'm done with that one. A little behind schedule, but I'm going to wrap this up because I want to tell you something. Okay, key terms. Okay, now, and most importantly, the practice quiz. So you take this, and it helps you to prepare for the actual quiz that you're going to take. And I'm just going to show you. What are codified misdemeanors and felonies known as? Case law, criminal law, civil law, or administrative law? Wrong. It's criminal law. Codified misdemeanors and felonies. Misdemeanor and felonies are not civil law. That's where you file in suits. It's criminal law. Criminal law. The Fourth Amendment is an example of which type of law? Yep. Yep. And so you go through. And so that's the last one I'm going to do. Burglary is an example of a blank that subjects the offender to a potential prison sentence for 1 year or more. Come on. Come on. There we go. There we go. And that's it. So it's as simple as that. So I'm showing you how you can see. Can you see how beneficial it would be to take time to go through and do that? How it will help you to understand and apply your material. Okay? And that's what every week you're going to have something like that. Okay? Any questions about anything that I've gone over? Because I want to spend, I really need to go a little bit over. I need to go maybe about 20 minutes, 10 minutes or something over, but hold on. Do you have any questions? You can type if yes or no. Okay, all right. So now I want to tell you something. Early on, I told you that in the module, in your announcements, that at the bottom of your general announcements, you will see adversity is a springboard to success. Let me explain to you how I arrived at that. Not just a statement I threw out to encourage you. This is personal experience. When I was 7 years old, my dad took me to a baseball game, Memorial Day of '57, and we came home. And that day, later that evening, I was 7, was put to bed along with my 5 younger sisters. And at that time, my father and a man who was renting a room from us in our house got into a fight. The fight ended up in the bedroom where I and my 5 sisters were. The man took out a knife and he stabbed my dad in the forehead. And all this blood started pouring down out of my dad's face. I remember it now as if it happened. 61 years ago it happened, but I have a photographic memory, so I'll never forget it. So the police came. The man ran out of the house. The police came, took my dad on a stretcher, and I'll never forget his face turning to my face. Not that he turned it, but it was laying there and it was facing on the stretcher. He hadn't died yet, but his eyes were open, which meant he probably was. Or anyway, the blood was pouring. I'll never forget that eye-to-eye contact that I had with this man, my dad. So my dad died. A few days later, the man appeared back into the house. Okay, no problem. And then you will be able to, you're going to get the key word at the end as well. So you're going to need to pay attention, listen to this for sure. So I understand. But at any rate, so the man ended up staying in the house. And when he stayed in the house, they dropped the charges against him because my mom said that my dad was the aggressor, and that he ended up getting off. So he continued to stay in the house with us, and for the next 5 years, till 62, my mom received beatings at his hand using weapons. He would go to jail, she would go back and get him. So I lived in a house of domestic violence. And this guy ended up finding himself where he would constantly be with my mother. So in the meantime, my mother had 2 more kids by this man, and they were both girls. So thus, I had 7 younger sisters. So when I was 12 years old, I ended up having to, we left the area. It had gotten pretty bad. So we left the area, and we ended up going to move to Indiana. We moved into a house. And when we moved into the house, the beating stopped at that time. This was 62, because my aunt from Michigan came to stay with us. And she stayed with us until around April of 63. And then she left. Well, Memorial Day of 1963, my mother left to go to she had a barbecue restaurant. She left me in charge of the house. The baby, she was still very little, still getting diaper changes. So my mother left. I woke up early the next morning, and there was smoke in the house, so I opened up and let the smoke out. Turned out there was some barbecue left in the oven, and somebody had turned the oven on or left it on. At any rate, I cleared the smoke out. I looked, and the car was pulling away that my mother had, that she shared with this guy. And so then we proceeded with our day. I looked in and saw my mother's bed hadn't been slept in, but that wasn't unusual. So she ended up not coming home. So later that day, 2 policemen came to the house. And when they came to the house, they announced to me, as the oldest, that my mother had been killed and was found dead in Chicago. I started yelling, "Scott, Scott!" The guy's name was Webster Scott. And so I had to quickly gather my wits, because at that point in time, my baby sisters were all looking. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm what they have left now. I'm the oldest. I'm the only male figure. So we were taken from Gary and taken back to Chicago to stay with an aunt. And she didn't want us at her house. They were trying to determine where they were going to send us. They were going to split all 8 of us up, send us different places. But then my aunt, the one that was there earlier, she came back from Michigan and said she was going to take us, and she and her husband had a house built, and we moved into that house. Well, I still had problems after that because it turns out that the man was expecting me to allow him to adopt me and change my name. I didn't want that because I wanted to carry my dad's name on. And so we had problems. He and I did not get along at all. But as it was, I would find out that he and my aunt did something illegally that I never found out until I was 20 years later, that legally they had changed my name and adopted me, and I didn't know it. But none of my credentials, my diplomas or anything in school, marriage license, any of that had that their name on it, but it had Richard Wright, the name I was born with. So anyway, going back to when I was 14, I continued with problems with this man, and I used to stay out of the house, stay at the church with friends, involved with social activities, visit friends, stay all night with friends. Of course, I was, I was given permission to do that, but I was trying to stay away, especially with this man. I would find out years later that the man was really mean, not just to me, but he also abused my sisters. So you take that part. Anyway, when I was 14 years old, 2 things happened to me. Number one, I got tired of dealing with them, so I heard this lady on the radio, and I went and found her and asked her if she could be my mother. I had never met her. She laughed, we became friends, and she stayed in my life. And by the way, years and years later, because I had lived off and on with her after that for a little bit, she legally adopted me. But I was a grown man by then. But that was just to make things right, to fix things up too as well, to give me my name back. So anyway, back to when I was 14, I would find out that the man who killed my father and mother was going to receive 10 years. 10 years. And back in those days, it was brought to my attention that 10 meant 5. And that for those 5 years, if he did well, they would reduce it a year and a half. Thus, he would serve, and he did, 3.5 years. So I was very disturbed by this, and hearing the possibility of that taking place, which did take place, that this individual would only get 3.5 years, I started asking questions. And family members would get upset with me. And then finally someone told me, and still to this day don't remember who told me, so I have an idea who told me, that this is a legal issue and that people called lawyers deal with this. So I kept pursuing that issue. I went to school as a 14-year-old in 8th grade, and I asked the librarian for a book on lawyers, and she had one book, and I got it, and I took it out, checked it out, went home and read it cover to cover, and the next day anybody I met, I introduced myself as Richard Wright and said I'm going to become a lawyer. And so I went through that. And having gone through that, I found myself being challenged by family members and others telling me that I was aiming too high, that I was probably not going to be able to make it because of what I came from, and that it was just, I didn't really get any help. And so I continued to persist, not by saying, but by continuing to do it. I went through school, and finally when it came time to graduate, I graduated from high school I went and stayed with some friends. They let me come. Their mom let me come and stay at their house and helped me get a job. And the job they helped me get was at a big Jewish law firm working in the mailroom. So I took the job, started the job in '69 when I graduated from high school, registered in junior college. Now, I will tell you this. One of the things that happened before I graduated from high school is that the church that I was spending a lot of time with, they presented to my aunt and uncle the opportunity for me to go to a 4-year institution, fully paid. They didn't have to pay a dime, and that all they had to do was sign the paperwork. My uncle said, no, I'm not signing because he's not taking my name. And I said, I'm not doing it. So I rejected it. So that was taken away from me. So I said, I went to the next step, like I told you. Went and got the job and took classes at night at a junior college. And immediately I met the lawyers at the law firm, and I was telling them as I was working in the mailroom that I wanted to be a lawyer. Well, in the meantime, I ended up getting married right away in 1970. And then here comes 2 kids, one in '71, one in '72. In the meantime, the law firm promoted me from a messenger to a file clerk. And then they promoted me to a law librarian. And then they saw that I knew how to research because I taught myself, which wasn't required for my job. They made me what they call a law clerk at that time, which is now known as a paralegal. And so I was on my way. In the meantime, I had left the junior college and went to a 4-year institution called Roosevelt University, studying political science, also at night and on Saturdays. And I did all of this on public transportation. I would have to be at work at 8:30 in the morning, get off at 4, and be in class at 4:30. Get out of class at 10, ride 2 hours home, studying on the L train and the buses. And I did that. And I stayed on the honor roll and the dean's list. And it came time for me to take the LSAT, which I did. I studied it. I didn't do the best in there, but I still studied it. And so I found myself in the situation where they ended up, I ended up deciding which school I wanted to go to. I said I wanted to go to Northwestern University School of Law. Once again, I was discouraged from that by some people. The lawyers didn't discourage me. They encouraged me because many of them had gone there. And they also knew my story. They knew my story. And so anyway, when it came time to apply to the law school had 6 pages that you filled out. But I sent a package that was so thick it had to go into a big box. And I had it hand delivered there. Well, the law school had said, you know, in their paperwork that they did personal interviews. The volume that were applying for a class of 250 was absolutely tremendous. It was like about 10,000 applications. Well, the school contacted me and asked because they wanted to see who was behind this paper, and I did end up going. And I sat there with these 4 people in a room for about an hour or so while they asked me questions about the materials, and I explained to them. I cried a little bit. I started talking about my situation that I went through as a child. And they adjourned and said to me, we don't give acceptances or accept students based on these kind of things. But we will say this to you, we've discussed it, and we've decided that we like what you said, we like what we read, and we believe that you're going to be really good at what you do. They said, so we're going to send you a letter which we think you'll like, and that's all we can tell you at this point. But that was just their way of telling me that I had been accepted, and a few weeks later I got the letter being accepted into the class of 1975 at Northwestern University School of Law, and I was on my way. And so as I got in law school, one of the first things I learned is that the first year of law school was so strenuous at Northwestern that they didn't allow you to work, so I couldn't work. So my wife that I was married to at that time, she had graduated and she was a teacher. So she was going to carry the load, which was going to be okay. But what happened is that that was the year that the first time in history in Chicago public schools that the teachers went on strike. And this was while I was deeply in my first semester at the law school. And it was hard enough for me to deal with the issues of the school than to have two kids and then now ran out of money. It got so bad that the electricity was turned off. So I studied by candlelight. But then it just got to me, and so I told one of my professors, Professor Joyce Hughes, who became my mentor, and then now she's still there working now. I go see her periodically. I told her what I was going to do. She says, come to my office and let me talk to you before you do that. So she took me in her office, sat me down, stood in front of the door, and told me, I am not letting you out of this room until you decide that you're going to stay and finish out. I will help you. I can't financially help you, but I will help you to focus. And true enough, I said okay, and I did. And 3 years later, I graduated with my law degree in 1978. You saw the picture in the student lounge. So people, as I was there at the law school, I met a lot of people. One of the persons I met who impressed me most was an individual who was a criminal defense lawyer by the name of R. Eugene Pincham, who would become Judge R. Eugene Pincham. Judge Pincham told me at his house when I was invited to go to dinner with his son and some other lawyers. When I told him my story, he said, let me give you some advice. He says, if you want to learn what you're trying to learn, being a defense attorney is what you want to do. Now that sounds like a tough task for a person who went through what I went through with the system. But I respected him. And so I said, okay. See, I'm a person who, when I see people who have achieved success, I believe they know what they're talking about. And so that's how I operated. So I ended up, he ended up taking me. He said, then I want to help you get closure. And he took me over to the criminal courts building and helped me to receive the files or copies of the files of what actually happened in my dad's case and in my mom's case. So I have those to this day. At any rate, I decided that I was going to become that. He introduced me to people like Johnny Cochran and other great trial lawyers that I had a chance to learn and sit under. And I used to go to court and sit and listen to them and see them do their thing. Well, anyway, in the process, I started also doing entertainment, sports, radio, TV, law, and things like that as well. But criminal was my passion. So I continued doing that. And then I ended up, with a third daughter when I graduated. My wife, my first wife, we and I were growing apart. We went in different directions. And then I ended up marrying another lady. I had a fourth daughter here, none but girls. And then I ended up getting away from her because she wanted to go in a direction with another man. In the meantime, I went to seminary because ministry became important to me, 91 to 93, for a Master of Arts in Religion, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. So I was running across problems. I had left the law firm, big law firm, in 1980 to start working with other guys and then eventually set up my own practice. I started doing radio on the air. People were, calling me and asking me legal questions. The show was called Know Your Rights. It was spelled WRIGHTS. Phone number was WRIGHTS or 974-4487. So I was marketing myself. So my practice was really, really growing. And so I ended up meeting a young lady that I'm married to now. I'll be married 25 years next year, July 28th. And she and I continued forward. In 2000, I decided to retire from being a lawyer to pursue a career in ministry, to teach special education, to run a janitorial company, and then I started doing closings on the side for title companies. So I did that for a number of years. In the meantime, she and I had one son, then we got a daughter, and then we got another son. Then after that, we got a 10-year-old baby girl. Now she's 10 anyway. She's born in 2008. So, yep, at my age, I'm 68, a 10-year-old. You see them on the pictures. At any rate, I continued on. And then around 2011, someone came to me to tell me about this school that I never heard of, Rasmussen College. I said that they were looking for someone to work at the school and teach business law. Now, let me back up a little bit because I forgot to tell you that before I married my current wife, I ended up taking a job in a tough town in the Chicago south suburbs where I became a part-time police officer, village attorney, village prosecutor, internal affairs investigator as well. So I got my law enforcement background. So anyway, came time where I came to Rasmussen College and I got the position to teach business law residentially, but I told them I was a criminal justice person. And so what happened is that the dean heard me and placed me in criminal justice. I still taught some business classes at the same time. So in the meantime, I found myself operating adjunct or part-time doing that. And then in 2014, a position opened up for what they call state program coordinator in the School of Justice Studies, and I applied for the position, which gave me responsibility for the campuses in Romeoville, Mokina, Tinley Park, Aurora, and Rockford. So Mokina, Tinley Park is one place. Romeoville, Aurora, and then Rockford. So there were 4 campuses. So I was working with all the criminal justice students as their coordinator. And then they came and hit me with, oh, the program's going online. Oh, yeah, just before that it was online. So I had to learn how to do online. And so I ended up getting that job full time. Then in 2015, they changed it and did away with the state program coordinators, and they added 2 more classes. And since that time, I've taught every quarter 5 classes, as I do today, online. And so I continue to reach students and let you guys know that whenever a challenge comes before you, to dig in, as I tell you my story. That adversity launched me rather than stop me. I adopted the philosophy of lawyers, and I have that mnemonic in my student lounge that you can look at and see. And each letter stands for an element that helped me to be successful, and that you can too. And so I come to you guys as your professor. I am now professor, full professor. I worked my way up from instructor to associate to assistant, and now full professor, Dr. Richard H. Wright. But I want you to understand is that I get tough with you guys because I don't want you to get lax. I want to produce, as I said, educated, professional, and ethical criminal justice professionals. And so in this course, as in other courses, some of you already know me, I'm consistent with that. I work with you guys, and I want to see you succeed. And so that I wanted to take time to share with you. And so I'm going to conclude tonight with this key word, adversity. That's it. You give me that word to get your points. So I'm going to say good night. I'll see you next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. And like I said again, those sessions will go 1 hour or less. So have a good evening, and I'll see you then. Good night.